welcome back. I'm so excited to be here with you today. I'm your host, Anisha Christensen, and I'm going to talk to you today about something that I've noticed myself coaching on a lot lately. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to come and do a podcast because obviously this is something that people need. And that is stepping into your queen energy, becoming the CEO, the queen of your business and of your life. Now, if you followed me for very long at all, you know that I'm all about teaching about feminine energy. Feminine energy. Like let's get everybody into feminine energy, right? And that is because as a world, as a population on a whole, we are in mostly masculine energy most of the time. We're in this transition into feminine energy, and it's been really cool to see that transition happening throughout the world. But for the past millions of years, we have been in mostly masculine energy. And so I preach and teach mostly feminine energy because we already have plenty of masculinity going on, and we need to bring in the feminine energy, especially for women, but even so for men. It was so cool. I was just speaking with Coach and Kim Job, G-O-B. They're known as Coach and Kim. It's a husband and wife team. And the husband is this awesome, very manly football coach. What does he call it? Where he does like performance coaching. There you go. And he and his wife have joined forces and are coaching entrepreneurs and just really anybody. But he, this very manly sports guy, was talking about how much more he has enjoyed life and business as he has started to integrate feminine energy into his life. And I was like, gosh, I was like, yes, 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 yes. So if you ever get a chance to chat with them, Coach and Kim Job, G-O-B, they're fantastic. Um, but because feminine energy allows for more flow to come into your life. So we want men in mostly masculine energy with a small amount of feminine energy, but we want women in mostly feminine energy with a little bit of masculine energy, balancing back and forth. Now, the perfect epitome of that in my mind of what, like, if you're trying to figure out, okay, what does that look like for me to be in a balance of masculine and feminine energy? The perfect analogy for this to me is a queen, the archetype of the queen. Ah, she's powerful, she's strong, she's regal, she's beautiful. She has an empire to run, right? Even with a king at her side, she's got stuff to do. She has people she's meant to like do the whole knighting, anointing thing, right? She's got ribbon cutting ceremonies to go to. She's got a court to hold court and help solve fix people's problems. She has a schedule to follow. And this is what I am talking about when I refer to feminine energy. And what I have realized is that most people, when they think of feminine energy, they think of what I call princess energy. Now, princess energy, and I don't know if any of you watched the Crown series on Netflix. I watched it last year and loved it. And it was so interesting because after, like, I was almost to the whole end of the series, and God was like, you know that you're watching this so that you can learn more about being a queen, right? And I was like, oh, and all of a sudden, all this awareness started coming in of like, oh my gosh, Queen Elizabeth was such a beautiful, and I don't know how much of that is true and how much is made up, right? Like, whatever. But regardless, I feel like they portrayed Queen Elizabeth as such a beautiful example of really owning the queen energy. And she wasn't perfect, right? Neither of us, none of us are. But she had really a really good, strong balance of this is what the queen does. This is what the queen doesn't do. This is my personal time. This is my family time. This is my work time. And she had a clear balance of what that looked like. She was absolutely beautiful and amazing. And again, whether it's true or not, I thought it was really interesting how they portrayed Princess Margaret as very much in this princess energy. She didn't have real obligations most of the time. She didn't really have a set schedule a lot of times. She could stay out late and party. She could sleep in all day. She could be drunk and high and whatever, right? Like she didn't have a country that was depending on her for leadership. And there's one scene in particular where um, Princess Margaret is like, come. They were together, and Queen Elizabeth was getting ready to go. And Margaret says, let's stay a little bit longer. Let's play cards. Let's do this. Let's do that. And Queen was like, I have an appointment at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. I can't stay out late and party. I have to go home and go to bed because I have a job to do. I have to be up at 6 o'clock or up and ready, by 6 or 7 o'clock or whatever it was, right? And Margaret's like, you're no fun. And Elizabeth's like, this is the job, right? So she has The queen has responsibility, but yet she's the one that decides those responsibilities. She gets to be intentional. She gets to plan and organize, and she can say yes or she can say no. But once she says yes, she has to keep her commitments. She can't just be in that princess damsel in distress energy. Is that making sense? I hope that as you're listening to this, you're seeing like, oh, okay, this is where I'm acting like a princess. This is where I'm acting like a queen, and recognize the difference between the two. Is it okay to be a princess sometimes? Absolutely. I had a day last week where I'm like, I am not getting up and doing all the things. I am gonna, but it was intentional, right? I'm going to stay in bed. I'm going to relax. I'm gonna lay here and read my book. I'm gonna make love to my husband. I'm just gonna enjoy this morning instead of getting up and getting going. But for the most part, because of who I am and because of what I am creating, I'm creating an empire. And that requires me to be consistent and that requires me to be diligent. But it doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be heavy. It can be joyful. And that's where this beautiful balance of the two comes in. So I hope that that as you listen to this, and as I'm going to share these three pillars of building the Queen Empire, but really what it comes down to is you're creating an empire because you are living your dreams and you're receiving your dreams and creating this as a part of your dreams. When I was a little girl, anytime anybody asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I said, I want to be a famous singer. I want to be a famous singer. I want to be a famous singer. And my sister and I would put on our princess slips, we called them, and or our ballerina slips. That's what they were, ballerina slips. And they were like, I don't know if you had these when you were a little girl, but it was like a whole piece slip with like a camisole and then this skirt attached to it that was like all fluffy, right? So kind of looked kind of like a ballerina skirt. And we would put those on and we would dance around the room. We'd be up on the coffee table and we'd be singing and dancing. And I would always pretend that I was a famous singer on stage, singing and performing and sharing. And guess what I get to do now with my life? I get to be on stage singing and dancing and sharing and performing and I love it. There are some parts of this empire, this dream that I am living that I'm like, yeah, I totally wanted this. Like this was I knew that this piece would be in. And there are some parts where I'm like, I had no idea that my living my dream, that me creating my empire and receiving my dreams and my desires would include these pieces. And for the longest time, I didn't think that I would have my dream. When I mean, it's cute when you're a little, 3 or 4 or 5 year old girl and they ask you what you want to be when you grow up and you tell them you want to be a famous singer. And, oh, that's so cute. And I was telling someone the other day, I remember, I think it was in fourth or fifth grade, I read 3 books a day from our school library because I wanted to win the competition for the most books read in the school year because the winner got this little cassette player. And then I'd have my own tape deck and I could put my songs in, my tapes in, right? And I could sing them and I could be a famous singer singing along to her music in my room on my own, not on like the big hi-fi in the living room, right? And so I would check out 3 books a day, Babysitter's Club. There's like Pen Pals Forever, something like that, Boxcar Children. I'm trying to think, Nancy Drews. I would check out all these books and I would go home and I would read as long as I could in the afternoon. And then, we have all our family stuff in the evening, and then we'd go to bed. And I figured out my parents' routine that they would come in and check on us to make sure that we were asleep. And then they would go in their room, and I knew that after that, like I was good to go. They weren't going to come back out again unless they heard something. So I would wait. I would go to bed, right? Go to bed. And I would wait until they came in to check on us and make sure we were asleep. And then I would crawl out of my bed and I had a little nightlight there by the side of my bed and I would get on the floor and I'd get my book right up in front of that nightlight and hold it just like this, like face literally like right here, right? So that I could read and I would read and I would read and I would read. And I read almost 3 books a day for months and months and months because I wanted to win this competition because I wanted that tape deck because it was vital to me becoming a famous singer. What was your dream? What was your dream when you were a little girl? What did you always want to be? And how are you doing that now? I hope that in some way, shape, or form, you are doing that. Maybe not in the exact way, but maybe still, like you've heard me talk about before, maybe you're still experiencing the feeling of what that dream was. Maybe it's not the exact thing, but it's still creating the feeling of what that was for you. And if it's not, then maybe we have some work to do. Maybe there's some things that need to shift. Maybe there's some permission that you need to give yourself because it's not very logical for me to pursue a career as a famous singer or a famous mentor or coach or whatever it is, right? Like, there's not very many people that actually make it, and more so now than there used to be, right? But that's not really a logical, practical thing to do. But it's my dream. So, like I said, want to be a famous singer. I did performance and lessons and stuff all through high school, went to college, studied music, graduated with a degree in music, met my husband the year before I graduated. Now, my plan and with my teacher's recommendations was to, once I graduated, move to Europe because my degree was in vocal performance, which is essentially like opera style singing. And there's much more appreciation of opera in Europe than there is in the United States. And so generally what happens with opera stars is that they get their start in Europe because every small European town or city has an opera house. Like there's hundreds and thousands of them. So people will move to Europe to get opportunities to perform, maybe enter contests, win contests, and then once they're well known in Europe, then they'll come to the US, and then that's when they can kind of establish their career in the States. So that was what my teachers were recommending that I do. And that was my plan because I wanted to be a famous singer. And then I met my husband, and we teased each other that we ruined each other's plans because my plan was to graduate and move to Europe. His plan was to graduate as a teacher. His first degree was in education, and he was going to teach during the school year, have summers off to travel and do whatever, right? And so we're like, yeah, we kind of ruined each other's plans, but in the best, most amazing way, right? And I remember when we were dating and getting pretty serious, and I realized if I got married, I'd probably end up staying stateside. I'd probably end up starting a family pretty quickly because that was kind of my culture, and I wanted to be a mom. Like I knew that that was important, and to have a family and not to delay having a family. And and that was a big decision because I kind of felt like I'd be giving up my dream. And I discussed it with several of my professors and teachers, and I remember two in particular. I went and spoke with one teacher, and I'm going to get emotional. I always get emotional when I think about this and tell this story. But I went in and spoke to her and kind of told her the situation, told her like kind of my dilemma back and forth, and asked her opinion. And she said, "Oh, Denisha, you will be married for the rest of your life and on into the eternity." She's like, it's so much easier to get your career started before you're married and have kids than to go back after you're married and have kids. So she's like, my recommendation would be just to focus on your career and stuff right now, and then you can get married and have a family and all that later. And I was like, okay. And see, she had gotten married early, had raised a family, and was now in her, I think she's probably in her 50s or so. And she was back teaching adjunct and kind of developing her career now at the time. And I was like, okay, like that makes sense. Yeah, I get that. And then I went and spoke with another professor, and she was unmarried in her 30s, maybe early 40s. I'm not exactly sure. Had never been married, had had the career, had performed all over the world, had had a beautiful, amazing career. And she said, Denisha, I've done that. And it doesn't mean anything to me because I don't have anyone to share it with. All I want is a family. All I want is to be married, to have a husband to come home to have children to love and to nurture and take care. And everybody has to make their own decision. But for me, when I heard her say that, it pierced me to my core. And I was like, yes, that is what I want. I want the family. I want a marriage. I want a husband. I want children. That is the most important to me. And to this day, family comes first. God and family always come first, no matter what. So I did. We got married, finished school, had our first son. If you don't know already, I have five boys in 5 kids in 10 years. Our oldest is on a mission. Our youngest is now in fourth grade. So about between like 20 to 10 years. Oldest is 20, youngest is 10, so about a 10-year span. And I just, for the first, gosh, 10 years or more of marriage, I kind of felt this martyr role of I've given up all this stuff. I've given up my hopes and dreams for putting God and family first. And I know that in the eternities, I know that in the next life, then I'm going to be able to, I'll sing with the choirs of angels and I'll worship God through my voice and through my singing. And I will share and I will teach and I'll do all that in the next life. But I've given up my hopes and dreams here and now for the greater good. And I believed that. I really did. And I did some little bit of theater here and there, and I did tons and tons of lessons, teaching lessons, and music classes and all sorts of things. But I really wasn't performing and shining the way that I really wanted to. And again, I was kind of in that martyr energy. I gave up all of this for you, all of this for God, all of this for my kids, all of this for my husband. And again, if you have listened to my other podcasts and if you followed me for very long, you know everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. That is the most important thing, is the energy that you do something in. And so I lived for those 10 years or so. Actually, it was closer to 15 years, and you'll see why in the story. In this very much martyr energy of me giving up. And I loved my life. I love my husband. I love my kids. We have a beautiful life, but I felt like I was giving everything up in order to have that. And to some extent, I was okay with it, right? Because that's what I chose, and I believe that I would have it in the next life. But there was one day when I was in Zumba, actually at our local rec center in a Zumba class, and my youngest son was going to be, actually, he had just started kindergarten. It was early fall, and I was just dancing my heart out. And I love, one of the reasons I love dancing, whether you're in an actual, it can't be like a dance class where you're like having to focus and learn steps. It has to be somewhere where you can just dance and be free and have fun. But one of the reasons I love that is because I get a lot of my biggest downloads and ahas and insights while I'm dancing, while I'm moving my body, while I'm carefree, even while I'm just out walking, right? And just enjoying the sunshine. Like I'll do a lot of talking with heaven, of praying, if you want to call it that, channeling, whatever you want to call it, while I'm moving my body. And I get a lot of those downloads when I'm dancing because I'm connecting with my body in a beautiful feminine way. And my mind is not focused on trying to do a certain thing. And I'm just feeling the music and feeling the energy and just having a great time. And this was one of those days. And I had this big, like a bolt of lightning, it just hit me out of the middle of nowhere. What if you weren't giving it up? What if it was just a matter of the timing of it all and the order from which it happened? And for me, the order that things were meant to happen in was get married, have children, raise those children to a certain point, right, where they were a little bit more independent, and then have the career, then have the dream of being a famous singer come in, all of it coming in. It was just the order. I hadn't given it up. It was just happening in a different way than I had expected. And I'm sitting there dancing to some fun Latin, groovy, sexy song, shaking my booty, and I'm just crying. Because I felt this so strongly. And that was the start. That it was fall of 2020, like a big transitional pivotal time for a lot of people. 2020 was. That was when I started my career. That was when I started composing music. That's when I started coaching. That's when just kind of everything started coming into place for me. And now, 4.5 years later, at the time of this recording, crazy to look back and to see what has happened. Crazy. I'm having everything I desire. Everything I desire is coming. I can see that now so, so clearly. And again, I don't know how it's going to happen moving forward, but hindsight is 2020. And I can see so beautifully how God has prepared the way. And so all of this to say, this wasn't the direction I was going to take this podcast today, but it's just, follow the energy. Here we are. What do you feel like you have had to give up that you're not giving up? You're just allowing a different timing, a different way, even a different path to get there. But you can still have your desires. If it's something that you desire, it's because you're meant to have it and it wants you back and God wants you to have it. The things that bring you joy, the things that light you up. What are those? Step into your queen energy, own it. Because a queen doesn't just lay around and wait for it to happen. She allows it to come, but she's willing to take the steps, the actions. We live in a physical world and physical action is required, and God loves effort. So what are the physical steps that need to take place? I think I've shared this before. I hate when someone tells me, well, if it's meant to happen, then I guess it will. And I'm like, oh, that's a wonderful spiritual bypass. That's a wonderful way to release any obligation, any what's the word I'm looking for? Not pressure, but any responsibility in the process. But guess what? We're here to co-create, not just have things happen to us. God wants us to co-create with him. So how can you co-create? How can you step into your empowered feminine energy that is a beautiful balance of masculinity and femininity and go create your empire? In my next episodes, I'm going to be giving you the 3, and now I'm thinking there might even be 4, 4 main pillars of creating your empire. Ladies, you know how this ends. The only way you do not receive your goals and dreams is if you completely give up and you don't allow God's timing, and you don't trust, and you don't take the steps. Otherwise, you know how this ends. I'll see you next time.